welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the core premise of Robert Kiyosaki's massive bestseller, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And it all really starts with two incredibly contrasting father figures. Think about it. One dad is highly educated, holds a PhD, yet constantly struggles financially. The other dad, he never even finished the 8th grade, but he goes on to become one of the absolute wealthiest men in Hawaii. So we're going to dive into the radically different advice they gave and really uncover the actual structural secrets to building wealth. Let's get into it. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll be hitting 6 key areas: the tale of two dads, why the rich don't work for money, assets versus liabilities, minding your own business, working to learn, and finally, the path to independence. All right, section 1, the tale of two dads. Rewind to 1956. 9-year-old Robert is looking for answers on how to get rich, and he's heavily influenced by two very different mentors. His biological father, his poor dad, was the highly educated superintendent of education. Then there's his best friend Mike's dad, his rich dad, an uneducated but brilliantly entrepreneurial guy. Now notice how just a few simple words completely capture their fundamental philosophies. His poor dad had this habit of sighing and saying, "I can't afford it." But his rich dad, he absolutely forbade those words. He insisted on asking, "How can I afford it?" And the reason why is huge. "I can't afford it" is a statement that just lets you off the hook. It literally shuts your brain down. But asking, "How can I afford it?" that's a question. It forces your mind to wake up, to do some push-ups, and to actually find creative financial solutions. And this divide went really deep. One dad urged him to study hard, find a secure job, and just play it safe. The other told him, no, learn to manage risk. So, at just 9 years old, Robert makes a pivotal choice. He decides to reject conventional wisdom and follow his rich dad. Moving right along to section 2, the rich don't work. To really teach Robert and his friend Mike this lesson, the rich dad didn't just sit them down for a boring lecture. No, he put them to work dusting cans in a convenience store for a measly 10 cents an hour. Obviously, after weeks of working for practically nothing, Robert was furious. He was totally ready to quit. But guess what? That was exactly what his rich dad was waiting for. He wanted those kids to feel the painful, grinding frustration of working for a paycheck. It hammered home a core philosophy. The poor and the middle class work for money. The rich have money work for them. That intentionally terrible pay was a setup to spark a burning passion, forcing them to use their imaginations to literally invent their own ways of making money. By experiencing that frustration firsthand, they learned about life's biggest trap. It's called the rat race. Look, people are driven by the fear of not having money, so they go to work. Then they get a paycheck, and desire and greed take over. They want to buy stuff, so they spend it all. And financial ignorance just acts like gasoline on these emotions. The end result? You wake up, go to work, pay bills, and repeat. Forever. Section 3, assets versus liabilities. Kiyosaki emphasizes a really crucial rule here. If you want to be rich, you have to understand basic accounting, but you do it using simple concepts, absolutely no complex jargon. So I want to pose the exact same crucial question to you that Robert's rich dad asked him. What is the real difference between an asset and a liability? If you go look in a textbook or a dictionary, the words are incredibly confusing. But if we strip away all that traditional accounting noise, we arrive at the absolute bedrock foundation of wealth building. Here it is, the simplest, most powerful rule you'll ever hear. An asset is something that puts money in your pocket. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. That is literally it. The rich acquire assets. The poor and middle class, well, they acquire liabilities, but they mistakenly think they're buying assets. Let's walk through the cash flow story because this is fascinating. Think about the middle class for a second. Their income flows straight into liabilities. We're talking big mortgages, car loans, maxed out credit cards. Their expenses simply grow right alongside their income. In fact, Kiyosaki points out something super controversial. Your primary house is often a liability, not an asset, because it pulls money out of your pocket every single month in taxes, maintenance, and interest. But then, look at the rich. Their income flows straight into their asset column. Things like real estate, stocks, intellectual property, and those assets, they just sit there and generate even more income. On to section 4, mind your own business. Now that we understand the power of assets, we need to look at how to actually build that column and leverage the massive power of corporations. There is this incredible anecdote about Ray Kroc, the guy who founded McDonald's. He was speaking to a group of MBA students and asked them, "What business am I in?" Naturally, they all laughed, figuring he was obviously in the hamburger business. But Kroc replied, "My business is real estate." It's a brilliant distinction. It highlights the difference between your profession, which for Kroc was selling burgers to pay the bills, and your true business, which is accumulating income-producing assets. So when Kiyosaki says, "mind your own business," he really means mind your asset column. And as your asset column grows, you've got to protect it. Let's look at the profound legal advantages of owning a corporation. See, an everyday employee earns money, pays taxes to the government right off the top, and then tries to live on whatever is left over. But a corporation, it earns money, spends everything it legally can on expenses, and then pays taxes on whatever's left at the end. It's entirely backwards. The rich use this exact structure to legally protect their wealth from the biggest bully on the playground, the taxman. Section 5, Work to Learn. The rich don't just sit around passively waiting for opportunities to fall into their lap. They literally invent money by seeing what everyone else completely misses. And to do that, you must prioritize learning over just chasing a secure paycheck. Once again, we see a massive, glaring contrast in the advice Robert received. His educated dad believed heavily in specialization, getting a PhD so you can learn more and more about less and less. But his rich dad, he believed in generalization, knowing a little bit about a lot of different things. Taking this to heart, Robert actually joined the Marine Corps to learn leadership, and he flew ships across the Pacific to learn international trade. He wasn't working for the cash. He was working to build a broad, totally unshakable foundation of intelligence. That broad, generalized learning builds what Kiyosaki calls your financial IQ, and it rests on 4 key pillars. First is accounting, really understanding your cash flow. Second is investing, the actual science of money making money. Third is understanding markets, getting a firm grip on supply and demand. And fourth is the law, using those corporate tax advantages to protect your growth. When you lock these 4 things together, you can confidently manage risk and invent money in places where everyone else only sees obstacles. Which brings us to Section 6, the path to independence. We've got the foundation. Let's bring it all together by outlining the psychological traps we have to avoid and the concrete steps to finally achieve true freedom. Now, even if you are highly financially literate, there are 5 massive roadblocks that hold people back. First, there's the fear of losing money. Second is cynicism, letting all that unchecked doubt and outside noise blind you. Third is laziness, which is so often disguised by that toxic phrase, "I can't afford it." Fourth is bad habits, like consistently paying your bills first and yourself last. And fifth is arrogance, which is basically just ego combined with ignorance. These 5 obstacles, they are exactly what keeps smart people permanently trapped in the rat race. So, to awaken your financial genius, you have to take action. First, you need to find a reason greater than reality, a really deep emotional why that keeps you pushing forward. Second, invest in your mind every single day. It's hands down your greatest asset. Third, choose your friends carefully so you can learn from both their successes and their failures. And fourth, the ultimate test of self-discipline. Pay yourself first. You literally allocate money to your asset column before you pay your monthly expenses. You use the massive pressure of those pending bills to inspire your financial genius to go out and create more income. It's a game changer. And how do you know when you've actually made it? I absolutely love this profound quote from Buckminster Fuller. He redefines true wealth. It's not about the shiny cars or big houses you own. It's a mathematical reality. Wealth is survivability. Ask yourself, if you stopped working today, right now, how long could you survive? When the cash flow from your asset column strictly covers your monthly expenses, you are no longer dependent on a wage. That is when you are truly wealthy. So, here's what it all boils down to. Every single day, with every single dollar that enters your hand, you are deciding your destiny. If you spend it on liabilities, you're choosing to join the middle class, but if you invest it in acquiring actual assets, you're choosing wealth. So taking these 6 lessons to heart, what's it going to be? Will you choose to be a master of your money or a slave to it? The choice is entirely yours. Keep building that asset column.